The people of Windfall carry a secret identity that hides in plain sight. There's suggestions of history sprinkled throughout the island, and the music's the biggest clue, although the compositional parallels may have snuck past your attention on the first playthrough. Windfall Island is the first major village you explore, one of the most populous in the entire game. The various chord changes complement this busy community, and the bass has quite the active day in the village. The bass hits 3 different pitches here, but not 3 different chords, because these first 2 bass notes of 1 and 3 are both part of the 1 chord, so it's a cool way to generate the feeling of motion for free because you haven't actually changed chords yet. The only actual chords in this portion are 1 and 4. Dire Dire Docks return to the 1 by riding the Circle of Fifths chords, and Windfall Island rides this same bus route but hops on at an earlier station. Each of these chords are a 5th apart, so if we continue to work a 5th backwards, we get the 6th chord, and that's where Windfall catches a ride. It's handy how you can catch the bus at any of these stops for a convenient momentum ride back to the 1 chord. Working backwards another 5th is the 3 chord, which you don't see as often, perhaps because 3 minor chords in a row doesn't provide much foundational energy. But if you boost it to become a major 3 chord, it contributes a shot of momentum up front. And Snaky Shanty from Diddy's Conquest knows how seductive these secondary dominants can be. Among the legends is the island of Windfall, which endures for centuries through a curious era in the Hylian timeline. Ocarina of Time split the series' timeline into multiple branches. After defeating Ganon, Link goes back in time to experience the remainder of his childhood, but Zelda stays. In her universe, evil does eventually return, and the goddess's solution is to send people to the highest mountaintops and then flood Hyrule to seal Ganondorf underneath. Windfall Island is one of these mountaintop civilizations, centuries after the events of Ocarina. The people here are oblivious to the history of Hyrule below the seas, and for them, the hero of time exists only as legendary myth. But that history lives on in their DNA and customs, with the surprise that Windfall's music weaves in Kakariko melodies throughout, but discreetly enough to sneak by undetected. Because a day in Ocarina of Time's Kakariko village includes all types of melody jumps. Moving in basic steps uses each scale note in a row. With skips, you hop over 1 note with each jump. And leaps jump over 2 or more notes at a time. Kakariko Village begins with large leaps that ascend to the top of the windmill. These leaps share parallels with taps, a military bugle call arranged by General David Butterfield in 1862 to signal the end of day lights out each evening, also called Butterfield's Lullaby. As a composition, it's an example of how you can stabilize these big melody leaps by outlining a triad chord, like taps as 5 to 1, 5 to 3, and 1 to 5. Which constitute the first 3 melodic statements of Kakariko Village. The tap's bugle call has since become an important part of ceremonies laying veterans to rest. But if anything, Kakariko's large, drawn-out leaps evoke the end-of-day calm of the village. The melody then descends by steps toward the tonic, as the village winds down for the evening. So how did Windfall reinvent Kakariko's theme so effectively that some people entirely miss the melody connections? Well, a good start was converting the time signature. Kakariko's 3/4 time isn't exactly a toe tapper, especially without any drums. But Windfall's 4/4 beats get you up and moving through a busy day on the island, this time with a percussion section you could play on cajon in the commons. At a tempo of 115 beats per minute, Windfall moves along faster than the 102 BPM in Kakariko, which even dips below 102 at times, with that technique where you gradually slow down at the end of a measure. Undertale's track Home tinkers with stylistic tempo fluctuations, with the slowdown of these tones unwinding toward the comforts of the familiar. But Windfall's stealthy identity hinges on how well it can integrate the melodies of its ancestors without attracting too much attention, and 100% of Kakariko's lead melody made it in. The taps portion appears as a supporting melody halfway through Section A, before venturing off into its own new Windfallian side quest. Picking up where the bugle stopped, the remainder forms the basis of its own new mini-section. It's not quite a Section B, but manages to create its own closure in the course of 4 measures, as its own self-contained mini-island. Kakariko's Section B appears in full in Windfall, including its grand octave hop on the 5. And this new bass line in between the Kakariko sections is so satisfying in part for its chromatic descent, moving 4 notes in a row down the smallest piano increments possible. Which it manages to do despite requiring only 1 note outside the key, this flat 3. It's one thing to use chromatic notes quickly in passing, but Windfall puts one on an emphasized beat, right at the start of a measure, in which case it helps to use a chord underneath that contains that chromatic note. So which chords contain it? Well, the 1 diminished certainly does. Windfall uses it here to help this chromatic descent along, with the 1 diminished generating a brief fall of uncertainty. After that fall lands on stable ground, there's plenty of other chords to keep you moving throughout the island's side quests and minigames. Now the basic way to build a chord is to pick a root, then just do 2 skips, and voila, you made a chord. But continue another skip up the scale and that adds the 7th. This chord creates a bliss that lifts you a couple inches off the ground. You don't see this chord as often because it's a bit too dreamy for your everyday needs. Sonic CD uses this 1 major 7th chord to celebrate the good future that Sonic created in Palm Tree Panic Zone. So when you need to bring things back down to earth, it's a lot more common to take the major 7th and downgrade it to a minor 7th. So common in fact that we just call it the 1/7 chord. It takes the foundation of a normal 1 chord and adds a bit of satisfying tension. Instead of sounding conclusive, that minor 7th hints that there's more on the way. It works in the DKC death music to tell the player that you're not quite done. Give it another shot. Kakariko Village uses the 1 chord for resolution, then the 1/7 to send us to the remainder of Section B. The minor 7th note shows up in the lower register arpeggios. The 1/7 chord that makes it into Windfall is more subtle, but it definitely initiates a motion to let you know Section B has more in store. By altering the chord to use the minor 7th like this, notice that we're now using a note immediately adjacent to the 6. Now magnets love to pull notes across a 1 semitone distance like this. And even better if the destination chord contains the 6, which the 4 chord does, and that's where Windfall goes. The same magnet is strong in Sonic Adventure's Windy Valley, which sees the same 1/7 chord set up the 4 chord. And there's one more melodic side quest to catch before setting sail, climbing up this tall windmill of a 5 chord. By taking the basic triad and stacking it up higher, we find new territory to explore during that chord, featuring new tones not found in the original triad. It's a way to take a chord you know and put more wind in its sail. This harp arrangement streamlines it by favoring notes on the first few floors. While this ocarina version keeps the upper extension melody line intact. It even made it into this accordion rendition. And did you notice the note at the top of the sail is the 1? This arrangement even adds in the 1/7 chord from before to send the mini island part into section B proper. There's not a lot of games with intergenerational lore quite like the Zelda series. A lot of people played Ocarina of Time when they were younger than young Link, and they still remember the solemn peace of Kakariko's theme. And playing the Wind Waker shows that what you went through in Ocarina of Time mattered, helping Hylian descendants endure into the future. It's not about whether Mrs. Marie specifically is a secret Sheikah, just that the Sheikah village that Impa opened up to all comers still perseveres through the centuries, with a positive spirit intact. Mrs. Marie grants you access to secret underground tunnels, and the Kakariko graveyard has a fair few subterranean passages, where you learn the Sun Song written by the Composer brothers. And at the Windfall gravesite, Tant teaches you the Song of Passing, with the same notes and day-to-night effect as the Sun Song.